The big question I saw probably most commonly after CitizenCon was, how does all this work with shards?
Yep, this is a big one indeed.
Oh my God, they asked that question. Holy shit, it's happening. How does this all work with shards?
I think I saw this asked 20 odd times. So the plan is that every base, every plot of land, every extraction pot will be visible across all the shards within a region. And then a lot of the functionality of the base will also be available across all the shards within a region. So if I make a base and I set up a shop, people on other shards can come visit and use my shop. The exception is going to be raiding and attacking a base. This can only occur on a single shard, and which shard that is dynamic based on the rule set. The easiest rule is always, is the owner online? Then the raid can only occur on that owner's shard.
Oh, all right. How the hell do you orchestrate an attack on a structure? How do you know who the owner is and when they're going to be online? How do you plan an attack around that?
This means that if I'm on another shard and I rock up with a gun and I shoot the base, it'll prompt me, you'll have to change shard in order to attack this base. Obviously, as shards increase, we see this less and less, but the advantage of that is that you'll never be in this scenario where your shard, you're not able to defend your base. You'll always be able to defend your base in this scenario.
And
Other games deal with this by scheduling. Exactly, Anvil. If there's no downtime schedule, then you can just never log on. So let's just figure this. Let's just roll through this. If I join the game, the single server system, which is clearly what they're still aiming for, EU 69 has the same political, territorial, environmental landscape as EU 68. Everyone in EU 1 to 69 has the same game in terms of the landscape of player-built structures. But there aren't the same players on every one of those shards between 1 and 69, right? If we all wanted to meet up as a group and we're spread across all different shards across the European region, we just need to switch to a different European region number shard. So we join that shard and then we could see each other and play together again, and all is well. If we then join the US region, everything, the landscape of the Star Citizen we've grown to know and understand, the territory control and the org lines and all this stuff would be completely different, because the US region, the US shards would have a completely different player base, completely different landscape of structures to the EU one. So let's say a bunch of my guys from EU wanted to go and attack somebody in the US shard, all right? We'd have to scout out their base in the US shard first, find out where it is, what shard it is. Let's say there's an org we're trying to go after. We're going to find out what shard they're on in the US region, find out when they come online, and then organize everybody from my EU shard to switch shards, get into their shard, their region at the right time to attack their base, assuming they're online, so on and so forth. That's how the MMO landscape is. That's how they perceive the MMO landscape of Star Citizen panning out. Do we know how large shards are? Not yet, because they're still working on that right now, Klaus, hence 4.0 and server meshing. The data for the bases will be streamed into every shard that requests it. So one data set for all bases, but everyone will see the bases as they scout out no matter what shard they're in. Yeah, unless they're in a different region. The US region shards will be completely different to the EU region shards. Offline base raids are scummy. This looks like a way to stop it. For anything outside the UEE, I think is fair game for offline base raiding. Otherwise, they need to come up with some sort of scheduling. Because how else are you going to plan an assault on anybody's base or any org's territory around when they're online? You can't. There has to be some sort of schedule. I don't like it. It's not my preferred way of doing an MMO. Never has been. But if that's the way they want to go, I don't have a choice at this point. I think we're sort of all on the same page here. So you join one big mega server. In this mega server are X amount of shards. Each shard can hold X amount of players. All those shards are divided into regions. The only time the landscape of any shard when it comes to player structures changes is when you change region. So every shard across the EU region has the same player structures. Every shard across the US region has the same player structures. Every shard across the Asia region has the same player structures. If you switch between EU to US, you'll have a different landscape of the game. Everything will be different. If you switch between one EU shard to the next EU shard. The landscape stays the same. The player structures and org lines and territories are the same. However, you can now interact with a different set of buildings because you're now on that shard that those buildings are active on. I think that's it, right? I think we're on the same page there.
And then a lot of the functionality of the base will also be available across all the shards within a region. So if I make a base and I set up a shop, people on other shards can come visit and use my shop.
Okay, sorry, I did get that bit wrong. Certain structures will always be interactable across the entire region, like shops. Makes sense. Commercial buildings, etc. However, you won't be able to destroy them. You won't be able to attack them.
The exception is going to be raiding and attacking a base. This can only occur on single shard, and which shard that is dynamic based on the rule set. The easiest rule is always, is the owner online? Then the raid can only occur on that owner's shard. This means that if I'm on another shard and I rock up with a gun and I shoot the base, it'll prompt me, you'll have to change shard in order to attack this base. Obviously as shards increase, we see this less and less, but the advantage of that is that you'll never be in this scenario where your shard, you're not able to defend your base. You'll always be able to defend your base in this scenario.
And if you're offline or there's a representation of your base in another shard, it's basically just a visual replica in those places.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, but people can also still use it. So the shops will still be functioning, that kind of thing. It's just when it comes to attacking, it all has to occur on a single shard.
Interesting. And I can already see half the comments already in response to that answer. There's still a road ahead between now and the release of base building and crafting. I promise you we will revisit this topic with more and more context on how that will work as server meshing comes online and the technology continues to evolve. As with everything, there's a plan today. As the technology progresses, that may change or evolve over time, but that's the current implementation that we're working towards, and you can guarantee we'll be talking about it again between now and the release. So how will this look like in terms of offline raiding and base defenses? Is there any aspect of this, if I just don't log in, is my stuff just always safe? Is there some decay timer? Is there some danger? How do you get rid of old decrepit bases that are just abandoned?
Yeah, so if you are in the scenario where your base is in a lawless area and you haven't secured the planetary shield tech from the previous week's station warfare, then you are open to be raided whether you're online or offline. You can create your own defenses to deter that. You will be able to create your own shielding, which forces them into a ground assault, walls to delay the ground assault, turrets and such. And then it could be the case where they're raiding the base and they don't actually know what's available to loot. They don't know what's in your storage, so it would be wise to occasionally take your valuables out of the lawless area and haul them back to a more safer spot like Terra or Stanton. But if you find yourself open like that, you can be raided.
Panic averted. All right, so there's that. We were right. You guys are right. It was, if you build outside of safe space, outside UE space, you're always attackable. That's where the shield technology comes in play. That's where your own defenses come in.
It's all gonna work out, man. It's all gonna work out. Oh, thank you, Copium.
I like how these first questions are all about how do I destroy and pillage other people's bases. Not about how do I live my life in these bases. How do these bases make my life better and more enjoyable? The first questions right off the bat are, how do I take it away from somebody else?
Kick over the sandcastles.
It's great. We spent so much love and work in order to make the most beautiful bases, and now we're talking all about just getting rid of it. Great.
Yep.
And that's, of course, like I said, the lawless systems like Pyro and stuff. Now, we did introduce, and you just mentioned the idea of planetary shields. How? What's our current plan for how those will work in high security systems versus low security systems?
Yeah, so the plan is with planetary shield tech that if you have it, your base is immune to attack, your stuff cannot be stolen, and there's actually 2 layers of shielding going on here. You have a air shield, which prevents bombardments, and then you also have, basically it hugs the building, so even if you go through the shield with a tank and try and shoot the building directly, it still won't take damage. So you really are, you're very, very, very safe when it comes to planetary shield tech.
That's good.
And
I was worried about
that's the same for if I build it out in the fields of Hurston, or if I put it on somewhere in Pyro and I have the credits to maintain the shield.
Correct. Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. Um,